Greetings, everybody. This is November 2nd, is a Thursday. This is the first post in a while. Earlier this week, we went through a video on a movie called Fly Boys. It is on Netflix if you want to watch that movie. That's what we went on over on Monday. Tuesday, we had a review for the test, and Wednesday was the test. So we didn't have videos for that reason. All right. Today, we're starting the 1920s unit. Normally, we would start with the social changes of the 1920s, but I decided that we're going to start with the changes for politics, because America after World War I is not the same country that it becomes, or at least that it was, 10 years earlier in the 1900s, because the country wanted something different. And again, after war is over, probably America after a while has been fed up with all the issues of society. For instance, you look at especially foreign society, not American society, but you look in foreign policy, Americans are kind of fed up dealing with other people's problems. World War I wasn't a problem that America didn't start, but we helped to finish. So Americans are kind of fed up of having, this war hanging over our heads, and we want to kind of get back to where America can just get back to being successful. So the bell ringer today I asked is, what fears do we currently have in the United States? This is the first bell ringer this week. I handed the sheet out in class. But what fears do we currently have in the United States today? And then after you list those fears, what is the ideal way you think Americans would like to live? Obviously, being in fear is something that does happen, but it is not ideal. It is not the ideal way of how we would like to live. Is there a reality that fear is a part of it? Absolutely. But that's not what Americans would ideally like to live. So I go over some of the ways of how would you think Americans would like to live. So answer that question and leads us into discussion of the 1920s that Americans had fears. They were feared of getting dragged into another war. They were afraid of Germans during World War I. They were afraid of how big the government was getting, all the rations, all the changes that were made to their lifestyles that affected the American population, and positive for the war, but negative for their personal lives. So as the 1920s begins, we begin to see Americans want to see some changes that occur throughout our lives. So when we look at the United States history moving in the 1920s, we have to look at one individual, and his man is by the name of Warren G. Harding. In May of 1920, he gives a speech as a presidential candidate. He's a senator from Ohio. He gives a speech on a return to normalcy. Now, I'm not going to play this speech for you. I have a recording of it and also have a downloaded copy, a transcript of the speech that you can download on Canvas. You just you read through it, the electronic copy. There's nothing going to be tested on it, but I wanted you to listen to it and follow along as it's being read by Warren Harding himself, to see what his goals and aspirations were for America. For instance, if I kind of get it out here and I'll download it for you, you kind of go to 1920s. And you scroll down to get to Harding's normalcy speech. There's some parts I'll show you of what it looks like, so you can use it as a kind of an aid to you. Now, with this speech here, this is what Warren Harding states that he really wants to see in major changes occur. Now, one of the first things we look at here is this section. All right, if we can prove a representative republic government under which a citizenship seeks what it may do for the government and country rather than what the government may do for individuals. This is a very familiar line of speaking that we hear in the 1960s by one John F. Kennedy, where he stated in his Boston accent, "Ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for America." So he asks that question, and Warren Harding does the same thing here. Is it more important for the government to do what helps with what betters the citizens' lives, or is it better for the individuals to do the exact opposite? So Warren Harding asks this question because people think about, maybe it's not the government's turn. Because remember, Progressive era, World War I, the government asked a lot of the people in terms of major changes, and the government was very active in the rules of citizens' lives, which was needed at the time. But now, after a war is over, America had done it enough, and I think American public, for the most part, was tired of the government getting in people's lives. So they was like, let's back off, let the government back off, let the people live their lives and make their own choices, so long as they are within the legality, within the law. The next part of this as well, and this is the same thing I just mentioned, is that the world needs to be reminded that all human ills are not curable by legislation, meaning that government can't change things and make lives better for people. All right, so essentially the excess of government offers no substitute for quality of citizenship, meaning you can't expect the government to make your life better. This is what Warren Harding is stating. This is not a truth that we understand today because America is different today. All right, but what the world needed after World War I was this message, this idea of normalcy, returning the country back to normal. All right, this root word in here that we look and we use to help us understand that. Now, also at the very end of this, we look at a whole bunch of other questions as well. That tranquility at home. This is one of our constitutional principles that we look at every essay. He says that tranquility at home is more precious than peace abroad. So the issues that deal with the world overseas are not as important as what we can do to make our lives better here. So again, America, a very clear statement saying that war and hardening is going to end our negotiations with the rest of the world. And again, they've been ended already because the League of Nations failed. The Treaty of Versailles failed in the United States. Where the United States, they signed the treaty, but our government never really accepted it. So this is a clear sign as well that America's heading in this direction of staying within themselves, staying alone. All right. So we read this speech, we went through it. Just so listen to it, follow along with it as you go through. See if there's any parts you want to look at as well, to maybe ask me a question about later. That's perfectly fine. But let me go back here to the continuation of this. Actually, I'll cancel out of the PowerPoint here and go to our. I can close this. There we go. I'll get us to our graphic organizer for the day and kind of the assignment. You can download this and print this out on your own and complete this with the online textbook. We go 1920s again. Very beginning, you can see down here. We did a graphic organizer on the Red Scare. Essentially, in Russia at the time of the war, communism took over in the country. Now, during the war, Americans were very afraid of, very fearful of Germans and entering the country as spies. This fear kind of moves over from Germans and it goes to communists. And at this point, Americans really begin to use the communism as a scapegoat for a lot of the problems, which leads to this Red Scare. This is the first Red Scare. There's a second one after World War II, which we'll talk about later. But use page 482 and 483 to kind of complete each quadrant with information that, with each event, information on each event throughout the Red Scare. There's 4 different cases there, and the book highlights them. Each blue heading is its own event. But we will review over this on Friday in class, and please bring it completed to the best of your abilities. We will write answers up on the board so you can see and get your own understanding of it as well. But just looking at these events, because this Red Scare really relates to what we would call, which many of you learned last year in 8th grade history on the Salem witch trials. So these witch trials were very, very big because they falsely accused people of being a witch without proper evidence, and these people were guilty until proven innocent. And even if they were proven innocent, many of them died at that expense of being innocent. So this is the same thing here. If someone's accused of being undesirable, I'm going to say like in terms of undesirable that we're going to kill them, but we're going to get rid of them. Someone who's an immigrant who could be a communist that's coming into the country, someone who is using their freedom of speech rights a little too liberally according to Americans at this time period, meaning they're trying to disrupt the country using their freedom of speech. A lot of people are guilty until proven innocent, not the other way around. So this is something I want you to pay attention to as you look at the graphic organizer, because there are some trends here that people's civil liberties, this established justice aspect of our core constitutional principles, they're not upheld whatsoever. This is a major, major issue as to why people's lives are affected during this time period. But it's what Americans did to ensure that their lives would feel safe to get back to normal. All right. So we look at these 2 topics, the normalcy speech and also the Red Scare graphic organizer. Tomorrow, if you were here, bring this in and we will review it as a class. All right. Everybody have a fantastic day. I will see you tomorrow, or if not, after the weekend. Have a good one.